January 15th, 1919. It was just another chilly winter afternoon in Boston's North End. The streets were alive with the clatter of horses, the chatter of dock workers, and the distant hum of ships loading cargo. Nobody knew that within minutes their world would turn into something out of a nightmare. At 12:30 p.m., a deep metallic groan echoed through the neighborhood. Then a thunderous explosion. Witnesses said it sounded like a machine gun firing. Others thought a train had derailed, but what came next? No one could have imagined. A massive steel tank, 50 feet tall, 90 feet wide, filled with more than 2 million gallons of molasses, had burst wide open, and from its shattered shell erupted a wave of sticky, brown death, 15 to 40 feet high, moving at nearly 235 miles per hour. This thick tsunami of molasses tore through Boston's streets like a beast unleashed. It swallowed everything: people, horses, buildings, vehicles, crushing, smothering, and suffocating everything in its path. The Great Molasses Flood had begun. They say the smell of molasses hung in the air for decades. But the story of how it happened, and what modern science later revealed, makes this one of history's strangest and most terrifying disasters. You see, this wasn't some freak accident. The signs were there all along. The tank, built in 1915 by the Purity Distilling Company, was a ticking time bomb. From the day it was erected, locals complained it leaked molasses through its seams. Children would bring cups to collect the sweet drips that oozed down the sides, and every now and then, the tank would groan, a sound that sent shivers through those who worked nearby. The company brushed off the warnings. The steel was too thin, the rivets too weak, but profits were more important than safety. And so the leaks were painted over, not repaired, until one unseasonably warm winter day, when the pressure inside the tank grew too much to bear. The explosion shook the ground. Rivets, some the size of a man's fist, shot through the air like bullets. Then, a wall of syrup taller than a house came roaring down Commercial Street. Witnesses watched in horror as the dark flood rolled through the city. Buildings shattered like matchsticks, an elevated train track twisted like a ribbon. A firehouse was crushed beneath the weight of the wave. People were trapped, some knocked off their feet, others pinned or drowned as the sticky molasses thickened around them. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? Drowning in molasses. But those who were there never forgot the horror. Rescue workers said it was like wading through tar. Every step felt impossible. Horses screamed as they sank, unable to break free. Some survivors said they could hear muffled cries beneath the syrup for hours after the flood, voices slowly fading into silence. When the chaos finally settled, 21 people were dead and 150 injured. Boston's waterfront was a wasteland. The cleanup took weeks. Workers used salt water, sand, and fire hoses to wash away the sticky mess. The harbor turned brown, and for decades after, on hot summer days, locals swore they could still smell molasses in the air. But the story doesn't end there. Nearly a century later, in the 2010s, scientists and historians decided to re-examine this bizarre tragedy, and what they found was chilling. They discovered that the molasses flood wasn't just a freak act of fate. It was a perfect storm of physics, temperature, and human negligence. Molasses, they found, isn't like water. It's what scientists call a non-Newtonian fluid, meaning it changes its behavior under pressure. In other words, when a massive tank bursts, the syrup can flow almost like water for a few moments. Fast, violent, unstoppable, and then within seconds it thickens again, turning into an inescapable trap. That's exactly what happened in Boston. The air that day was just above freezing, but the molasses inside the tank had been warm from recent deliveries. When it exploded into the cold January air, it suddenly cooled, thickening like cement around anything it touched. People who weren't crushed by the wave were suffocated by it. Rescuers couldn't even move through it. Their boots were sucked in, their hands stuck fast. In the 2010s, engineers used modern computer simulations to reconstruct the disaster. The results were shocking. They proved the wave was capable of hitting 35 miles per hour. Faster than anyone had believed possible for something so dense. They also confirmed the steel tank itself was catastrophically, Under-designed, the steel walls were half as thick as they should have been. The rivets used were of poor quality. And worst of all, the company had never even tested the tank with water before filling it with millions of gallons of syrup. It was corporate greed, engineering failure and ignorance, all wrapped in sweetness. In the years that followed, over 100 lawsuits were filed. The court heard thousands of pages of testimony from engineers, survivors and experts. 6 long years later, the company was found liable. They paid out over $600,000 in damages, a massive sum at the time, equivalent to millions today. But the true legacy of the Great Molasses Flood wasn't just in the courtroom. It changed the way America built things. After this tragedy, cities began demanding structural tests, certified engineers, and safety regulations for construction projects. A disaster born from carelessness ended up reshaping industrial safety across the country. Today, if you walk down Commercial Street in Boston's North End, you'll find a park, Langone Park, standing where the great tank once loomed. Children play where people once ran for their lives, and there's a small plaque, quietly telling the story of the day Boston drowned, in molasses. But behind that simple plaque lies a deeper message, that human arrogance, the refusal to listen to warnings, to cut corners for profit, can turn something as harmless as syrup into a weapon of destruction. That sweetness can conceal danger, and that even a century later, the lessons of the Great Molasses Flood still stick with us, because in Boston, people still say, on warm days when the wind is just right, you can still smell the sweetness of death.